All right, perfect. How old were you when you started playing baseball, and when did you realize that it was your passion?
I started playing when I was 3. My dad gave me like a baseball set, right? And you do the soft toss and you do the things. But my mom always said, um, and she listens to all of these. So hi, mom. That I always used to just throw the ball as far as I could at 2 or 3 or in a crib, and my grandma still tells me. And I used to throw the ball to her, and then she would throw it into the crib, and then I throw it back to her. This is at 2 or 3, right? And so for some unknown reason, my parents got me a golf set, and it happened to be left-handed. So I learned to be left-handed because the little kids golf set, this is in 1995. I was born in 93. So this is 95, 96. The set happened to be left-handed. And that's how I became left-handed. So I'm dominant right hand. I throw right hand and I hit left-handed. So in baseball, you can play infield and be a left-handed hitter. That's really important. Well, I was afraid of the ball my whole life. I don't know if we need to say that louder or put it on the screen. I'm afraid of the ball. Okay. And so I always played outfield, and I was always a left-handed hitter, and that paid off for me throughout my career. It's the reason why I've been able to have a career, is just because I was left-handed.
And then at what point did you start getting recruited to the D3 school that you ended up at?
So I played at Chaparral High School in Scottsdale, Arizona. National championships, by the way. I don't know if I need to say it louder because my girlfriend always makes fun of me that I always say, or state champion, right? Back-to-back state champions. Oh, by the way, um, I didn't have any college scholarships. I had got one phone call from the University of Utah. This is about 2 weeks before the season ended. And I'd always wanted to play in college. I hit fourth in front of a kid who is still Chance Adams, who is a pitcher with the Royals, got to the big leagues with the Yankees 3 years ago, and Dylan Cousins, who was a first round pick, like supplemental round pick. So I'm hitting in between both of them. No college offers, no nothing. I think I ran, my arm stinks. I think I ran poorly, but I was hitting 400 or 450 the whole year. And no calls until 2 weeks before the season ends. I think the beginning of playoffs, University of Utah called and said, "Hey, we would love for you to walk on." And I said, "Yeah, thanks, but I don't want to walk on. I'd rather do something else." About 2 days later, I got a call from Zach Fregosi at Trinity University, San Antonio, D3. Never heard of him before. And he goes, "You should come visit. We really want you to play here." Which we're going to call Austin Singer, who's was one of my best friends at Chaparral. And we just called two kids from Brophy, Connor Moore and Nick Jewett. And we called another kid from Phoenix, Drew Butler. And we're going to call another kid from Phoenix, Troy Nelson, who goes to, who was my teammate at Chaparral. We're going to call him next year. And so I saw this whole core group. He's from Tucson, right? So I saw this core of Arizona, and I said, "Yeah, I'll check it out." And I walk up, and it just felt so natural to be there in San Antonio and to be at that school. And I now look back on it very fond of my experience there and the national championship and the people we get to meet and the memories. But I didn't think of the cost of going. In baseball, we don't get scholarship. Usually, if you go to D1, you'll get 20%, but nobody gets a full ride. So I'm like, well, if I want to play college baseball, I guess I have to go to Trinity. And I played every game except for 3 in 4 years because I forgot the signs. And so for those listening at home, remember the signs. And anybody of my friends would go, "Jeremy didn't listen to the signs. He didn't need the signs." So, but Trinity University was the only place that wanted me to play. And I made the decision to go there because I wanted to play, and it paid off.
And it paid off in a national championship
Yes, it did.
in
Well, if I say it too
2016.
loud, my girlfriend will go, "Well, it's D3. It's not, whatever."
Regardless,
I know.
I mean, that's an incredible experience at a D1 level. But I don't feel like there's much pomp and circumstance for national champions at D2 and D3 levels. How do you fix that as just a general sports loving community?
So we won a D3 national championship. The ring is somewhere in that box next to that blue glove, right? You're one of maybe 300 Division III college baseball programs, and it doesn't matter nationally, national championships under Division I. It doesn't matter, except to the people in those communities, except to that school, except to that town if it's a small town. You raise a really interesting point of how do we make it more, raise the notoriety or make it more known or make it more important. I actually am in the space that says that we don't need to do that, because it matters to those who it matters to. It matters to the families. It matters to the coaches who spend their whole lives trying to win a national championship. It matters to the conference. I still talk to the commissioner of the SCAC because of the relationship that we were able to build, because we had always won the SCAC and I always wanted to be in athletics in some way when my career was over. So I would always pick his brain. And so it's what it means to the people who build those relationships. And at any level, you just want to win at any level. So to say I'm a national champion and to say our team, we won a national championship, and to walk into our athletic center in San Antonio and I'll be trophy, and to see 2016 national champions and to see the photo of us as we won, it brings you back to that. That's what's important about it. In the age of social media, maybe it's a cool video, people are going to see it, but I get to look back on those memories and know that the people that I did it with were all national champions, and we all for 4 years did whatever we could to win, to win at all costs. And that's what makes us, when we look back on that team, really special. And now our coach is a national championship winning coach, and our program is a national championship winning program. And I was told when I got recruited, you're going to win a national championship your senior year. And that's what happened. And so all of those things are just really, for all of us, for everybody involved, are really important pieces of our journeys, both in sports and out of sports.
And then 2016 was a pretty stellar year for you, I would say. And then the draft came, and 31st round, 940th overall. That's just something that when you start in youth baseball, they don't really tell you about. I mean, you see the first few rounds and then it kind of peters off. How would you like athletes who go in those later rounds to be represented?
Well, there's no 31st round anymore. There's only 1 through 20 now. So the cuts in minor league baseball decreases the opportunity for guys like me to play professional baseball. And if I played now, my career would have ended, and I wouldn't have had the opportunities to play in other countries, or because my journey would have ended after the season was over. And so when you look at the landscape of youth and even professional sports or college sports, college baseball to be specific, when there are less opportunities to just continue playing, it's damaging to the people who are going to be there in 5, 6, 7, 10 years, because there's less opportunity to pursue that professionally. Is indie ball going to benefit? Yeah, sure. More guys are going to go play, better players are going to go play, and it might increase the product on the field. International baseball might get better, but they're still limiting the amount of Americans that can play in certain leagues. So there may or may not be more players going, but perhaps better players, because better college players now, instead of being a 21st round pick, you might go play in Germany or Italy. And I think that's a good thing. But cutting minor league baseball just for the hell of it, it didn't really do anything. From the game's perspective, it didn't benefit anybody. 42 communities lost baseball. Now some of them have college baseball, and we can talk about Morgantown and all of that. But a guy like me, and every single round from 21 to 40, loses the opportunity to pursue a dream that they've worked their entire lives for. And I think more people are going to see basketball and football as options rather than baseball, because not only are you going to get a scholarship in basketball and football, but there might even be opportunity for you more so than baseball outside of playing in college.
It is so
So
interesting that the minor leagues are so vast and they don't really have an equivalent in other sports other than like the G League and in basketball. And yet there are still so many underserved athletes swimming around in the minors for years and years and years, hoping for a big break. I mean, even if you bring that number of complete minor leaguers down, you're still not helping the ones that are here.
You raise a point of, I can tell in your voice, the empathy that you have for athletes transitioning out of playing, which I'm sure a lot of your interviews and a lot of your conversations kind of lead to that. And we'll get into that today too.
For sure.
But when the league and the teams and the environment does not provide for a resource outside of playing, even a resource while they're playing, you're doing the game, you're doing the athletes, you're doing the families a disservice. And so the work that I've been able to do at More Than Baseball, the work that our team has been able to accomplish, the partnerships that we've been able to make, and the notoriety that we've been able to have is just because we fill a need that is not provided from the environment. So in the G League, players make on average $40,000 a year. In the AHL and the ECHL in hockey, they make, at the ECHL, I think it's $50,000 a year on average. At the AHL, it's about $80,000 a year. Well, at the equivalent level in minor league baseball, at the AAA level, players are making $15,000 per year, which is an increase of 25% of the, I don't know, 12,000 they were making 4 years ago, right? Why is that? Well, there's no structured support for players, and there's no collective voice for players to have those discussions, have a seat at the table. So because Major League Baseball has this antitrust exemption, you're looking at a population of athletes close to 7,000 that does not have support other than what More Than Baseball is able to provide, right? From the housing and the food and the equipment and the career services and the transitioning and the financial guidance and the mental health coaching. The teams don't provide any of this other than now maybe housing, but we've even seen some instances of, yeah, we'll provide housing to those that qualify. And what does that look like? Players still don't have adequate housing across minor league baseball. So you look at these issues and it's a systemic issue because, oh, boo-hoo, they're professional athletes. Well, boo-hoo, you can't boo-hoo a 21-year-old Venezuelan who hasn't seen his family in 3 years and doesn't speak English and is here on a work visa, and then he's afraid to go home because if he gets released from his work visa, he can't come back to the country and provide for his family. These are individual stories that I'm lucky enough to know people who have gone through this. And I'm fortunate enough to work at an organization that helps players stay in the country, seek asylum, because the teams don't provide these opportunities. That's where baseball is. This is where we are. And that's not going to change from the top. People just have to do the work. And you do the work because it's the right thing to do.
What is the number one thing that once you were drafted, you were not expecting?
I walked in my first day, I get drafted. So we won the national championship. 2 days later, I'm in Florida doing a tryout. I'm the only Division III player there. 2 days later, I'm home. Actually, the next day I was home, and 2 days later I was drafted. And then I flew back to Florida. And I missed my flight. And so I had to call on my first day, and then I had to call and get another, whatever. That's neither here nor there. What I wasn't expecting was that I walked in and I said, I don't have bats. Can you help me get bats? And they said, no. And can you help me get this? No. Can you help me do this? No. Now, this is 2016, and things have gotten a little bit better because we know that nutrition with the Toronto Blue Jays has gotten much better. And we know that the LA Dodgers do an incredible job. And I know that the Cleveland Guardians do the best job in baseball in supporting their minor leaguers, right? There are teams that do it really well, and there's some teams that don't. And so you're in this environment of everybody's in it for themselves. You do not care about the person next to you. You do not make friends because you're competing to get to the next level. Not only that, but the anxiety and the stress and the depression and the that comes with, am I going to get cut today? I just saw him get cut. What do they think about me? Not knowing your place or your position to go into every day going, this might be my last day. And the fear that comes from that, not going, oh man, I get the opportunity to play baseball. It was not about that. I don't think one day I felt, wow, I have the opportunity to play baseball. For me, it became life or death. And the life or death took over. And it was I just physically and mentally, I'm exhausted. I can't continue to do it this way because I signed for $5,000 and that was a 31st round pick. When the guy I'm competing against was a 10th round pick that got $250,000. So I had $5,000 worth of opportunity and he had $250,000 worth of opportunity. And the killing yourself over all of these things. And then you get home after the season and you have to go to Gold's Gym because that's all you can afford. You can't afford to improve yourself, or you can't find a job because no one's going to pay you other than doing baseball lessons for 4 months. So you can't better yourself. And you can't think about starting a business because if your team finds out, at least at the time, they go, why don't you need to focus 100% of your time on baseball. There is no after baseball. So all of this stuff is it's a really difficult environment if you're not prepared for it, and no one's prepared for it. So the people that make it through are the strongest willed people. And some of the strongest willed people can't do it. It's just this really difficult thing. Playing minor league baseball playing professional sports is really difficult because of all of the pressures that are around you and the once in a lifetime opportunity to do those things. What I was not expecting was the level of difficulty that every day entailed. And the cream rises to the top, right? The cream gets to the top in minor league baseball, but they put that cream there. How many times can I say cream? I'm just going to keep saying cream. The players that make the major leagues are the ones that they want to make the major leagues. Do some players sneak through? Yes. But you have to do incredibly well in the very little opportunities you're given. And I wasn't ready when those opportunities presented themselves.
That was just very, very genuine. And I'm sure that there are hundreds of people that share that sentiment, but they just get lost in the shuffle. And I don't think that's fair at all, especially because you said it so well. You said it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that's basically what professional sports are. I mean, I talk to athletes all the time who suffer career-ending injuries, and suddenly, who are they? I mean, so much of the interview that I end up doing with each of these athletes has to do with identity and how closely they identify as an athlete, and then what happens once it's over, whether that's by choice or by injury or by getting cut. It's an amazing story, and everyone's is slightly different, but it's all just the same general thought process. I mean, who am I outside of sport? And when do I have to make that decision?
I was in college as my junior year, and somebody came back. His name's Jonathan Hall. He was a senior when I was a freshman. And he looks at me and he goes, "Can I curse?"
Go ahead.
Yes. He goes, "You better fucking enjoy this." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I'm 4 years out of playing, and I wish every day I can come back and do some of our bullshit scrimmages on Tuesday afternoons." That was the most fun I ever had playing baseball, was the Tuesday afternoon scrimmage the day after an off day because I was happy to be back on a field again. It made me think about like, who am I when my career is over, whenever my career is over. And I gave for 4 years, for my entire life, pretty much before college too. But for 4 years, I did everything I could to get drafted. That was the goal. I told Bruce Maxwell this. I wrote Bruce Maxwell's stats, his college stats, his junior year. He got drafted out of Birmingham Southern his junior year. He was supposed to play Division I. He was always going to be in the big leagues, but he went to Birmingham Southern because he had like a blood clot in his leg, and no Division I team wanted him, and so he went to Birmingham Southern Division III school. This is from like 2008 to 2012. And he was a third round pick or a fourth round pick out of Division III, right? And his stats were, I think he hit 470 with 13 home runs and like 65 RBIs his senior year. And for my entire college baseball career, I wrote on my bathroom mirror 470, 13 home runs, 70 RBIs. And my senior year, I hit 420, 11 home runs and 75 RBIs, right? All I wanted to do was just beat that. That was my goal, is to get better stats than Bruce Maxwell, because I knew that if I did that, I would get drafted or at least have the opportunity. And I knew our team was good enough. And so if we won the national championship, that just kind of increases that. So, but who was I if I didn't? That was the biggest thing I was afraid of. I wasn't afraid of, well, if I don't get drafted, what am I? I was afraid of what the hell I was going to do next, because I was not prepared to do sales or to jump into work or to not be a baseball player or to not be around the game. So I was incredibly fortunate that decision was made for me. But what I got released, so I got injured in 2017. I got released right before my 24th birthday. And I started More Than Baseball in 2018, right after that. But I didn't know what I was going to do. I sat at home I couldn't walk for 8 weeks. And I sat at home until February, just doing nothing, just being miserable, because I didn't know what it is I wanted to do. Now, imagine I'm 28, or imagine I'm 32. And you put off those conversations because you just don't want to think about it, because it takes time away from being an athlete. And you live in this limbo of, it's not going to last forever, but I'm not ready to think about what's next because it'll take away from what's now. And it's just this idea that this is the idea of everything I do is what can we do to help benefit you now? And what can we do to support you when your career is over? Because I am just unshakingly tired of hearing people say, oh, he's going through trouble. I hope he gets the help he needs. I hope she gets the help she needs. Oh, Simone Biles, is doing this in the Olympics. Boo freaking who. She should go compete for USA because that's her job. There's one Simone Biles, there's a million others exactly like me who just don't have a resource or mentor or a coach or somebody in their corner that understands them. And so everything that I do and even live by is someone's going to see what I do. I enjoy doing these conversations, but they're important. And so if I can show that I went through trouble with my personality, that there are certainly others. And now, if you're a baseball player, there's a resource. And now, if you're an athlete, there is a resource for you. And creating something that wasn't there is you, or like our coaches at MindReady, or like that I guess where you heard me was this listserv, right? Communities of people now have the ability to support athletes. So when we look at the foundation of this entire thing, it's because when you look at the transitioning process, who is there to support? It's all individuals. Now there's communities. And where there's communities, there's structured support. And where there's structured support, there's actual outcomes. And so I feel very passionate about that.
As well, you should. I mean, you are the living definition of the person that you want to help. And I think that that's really important to set that precedent. Like I've done it and I did it with no help, and now I'm here to help you because I realize what kind of resource I needed in that moment.
It's really
And
easy to do.
right.
More Than Baseball has been successful because we put together a job transitioning program, a career transitioning program, and athletes use it. Why do they use it? Because they didn't have anything in their network. Why is MindReady going to be really successful? Because it's a resource that just isn't there. So things are successful because they fill in. Nike became successful because there was no athletic training shoe before them, right? So you find these little pockets of um, of opportunity, and you just gotta run with it. Like, why do you do this podcast? Because there's nobody who can do it like you, right? And there's nobody who asks the questions like you. And it's a successful podcast, and you love doing it because you find fulfillment in that. Because you allow people to tell their story, and people get to hear it and go, "Wow, I'm really happy that you took the time to do the editing and to upload it, because you think that if one person listens to it, it's going to benefit them." That's important. And where there was once individuals, and I'll always say it, like where there's once individuals doing these things, now it's a community of people that can work together to benefit the greater good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that resources like MindReady, like the hidden opponent, like, I mean, there are a handful I can think of off the top of my head right now that are doing amazing work in athlete mental health. And they're, if they were juxtaposed onto like a lifespan, their business would not even be in kindergarten. So
Yeah.
it's an industry that is really branching out, but we're at the very beginning of these dialogues.
It's so when we started More Than Baseball, no one was publicly supporting the well-being of those athletes. There were some people who were arguing for X, Y, and Z and suing and whatever, but there was no one dedicated to the well-being, no organization. There were some individuals that were, helping athletes where they could, but there's no organization designed to do those things. And where people used to say, well, boo-hoo, they're professional athletes, they shut up and dribble. Now it's, oh my God, I can't believe they live like that. Oh my God, how can I help? Or, yeah, I understand things are bad, they can go do something else, but it's not the boo-hoo, go shut up and dribble. So there are little increments that I've been able to see in the dialogue, because where there's a foundation of community to where people now feel comfortable talking about these issues publicly. So right now, we are not even at the tip of the iceberg on mental health. We are at the precipice of this entire dialogue changing in mental performance for athletes, and even for kids at the high school level. Because now there's Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and Kevin Love and Hayden Hurst and these people who speak publicly about the issues that they faced. But now there's actual resources and education being provided to athletes to say, now I have a foundation of education. And the hidden opponent is an incredible resource for that showcases, but also educates. That is now a resource for people to say, I am not alone in this. I know I feel this. MindReady is a resource that can now be a practitioner in this for athletes to say, yes, I have the education, but I could really use someone to talk to. We are the talk to. Man, I hope she gets the help that she needs. Well, now I hope she goes to MindReady because they've proven that there is help available for athletes and that athletes will benefit from the services provided. And that comes with education and resources and just a mentor and a coach in their corner. That's the beginning.
On MindReady's website, you have a vast variety of executives How do they all play in? What are their roles? And if I was to seek out MindReady's assistance, who would help me and how?
You go to our website and you click get started and you fill out a little survey, or you can go directly to our roster of coaches and pick out individuals, but you put in your preferences and who you are and your background, and the algorithm spits out a coach that we think will work with you. If you play basketball, you'll be with our basketball coach, and if you play baseball, you'll be with our baseball coach. But if you play football and tennis, you might get the football coach or the tennis coach. All of our coaches have backgrounds in these sports. We're getting a swimming coach. We're getting another tennis coach. We're getting a volleyball coach. We're getting all of these coaches because we're going to have all of these athletes that are in these specific sports. It makes my life really easy because I don't have to. All I need to do is just get this in front of somebody, a parent, a family member, a friend, a coach, an athletic department, a podcast, and someone might hear it and might go, you know what, my nephew could use this. You know what, my son could use this. My daughter can use this. My coach could use this. One guy asked me, I play tennis and I get really frustrated when I hit a bad shot. Can I do this? And I'm like, you're 45 and out of shape, but yeah, come on, let's do it because you're an athlete. And when we focus on the mental performance of these athletes, when you can make it as easy as possible for them to get what they need in 2 clicks, 3 clicks, you have a recipe for something really good. So if you go on to our website, I built it. So if there are any spelling errors, I'm sorry. But if you go to our mission and you look at the people we have on our team, there are PhDs. Max Rappaport and Dr. Aaron Smith are on our team. There's Dr. Rachel Hoft. There's Dr. Angela Griffin. There are so many people on our team that are experts in this field. And there are former and current professional athletes willing to work with the high school kids, the college kids, even the pros that come in to mentor them. And what we did and what we have been able to do is to build this resource using people who are just as passionate about it as me, but have the drive to want to be those one-on-one practitioners. I love teaching. I will one day be in a classroom teaching and teaching this. Hope everybody on my team feels as passionate about me, about the education components that can be provided. And I'm really happy I did this. And we're creating this space that has not existed. And that's the really fun, exciting part. And if there are others that do it in the space, oh, fantastic. That means more athletes are getting support. That means we won't hear about these horrible stories that are coming out throughout college sports right now, saying that these athletes don't have the support that they need. These are terrible things. Are we going to stop? Is MindReady going to stop every single problem from happening? No. But if somebody needs the resource and somebody has the ability to act on it, and if education and communication and mentorship and coaching can be a component that assists them on the field and off the field, now you are providing something really special. And that's the difference between just a shot in the dark and something that is sustainable.
Let's talk about your experience personally outside of MindReady, your relationship with baseball and how it changed with Team Israel. Because that seems like a really cool portion of your life.
It was the most, you always think like, okay, what's my career going to be, or what am I going to look at 30 years from now on my career? And I can look back on my career going, I didn't get past short season. I didn't travel to Tokyo with the Olympic team. But if you told me in high school I would have these experiences and be able to do these things, I would have said cool, but I wouldn't have believed you, right? I didn't think I was capable of just creating the opportunities that I was able to have because of baseball. And it's because of baseball I've been able to meet all of my friends. Every single one of them came from playing baseball. I was able to live in Israel. I was able to become an Israeli citizen. I was away from making it to Tokyo with Team Israel. I helped the team qualify in the European Championship, and um, I've won national championships and state championships and been part of incredible experiences that I get to look back on incredibly fondly. But I know at a certain point, it could have not happened because I could have quit. I could have gotten burnt out. So what being on Team Israel did was it showed me how lucky I am to have a second chance at doing it. I had been retired for 2 years. And I called Peter Kurz of Team Israel and I said, hey, I run this nonprofit. I'd love to bring equipment to Israel. And he said, do you want to play on the Olympic team? And I said, yes. And I bought a pair of cleats and I hadn't thrown a ball in 2 years and I hadn't swung a bat in 2 years. And I started getting back into it and I hated it. I hated playing baseball again. I didn't want to go. My body hurt. Mentally, I didn't want to go. I had a job that I liked. I wasn't making much money at the time, but I liked it and didn't. It was 2 weeks away, and the just going on leave and taking sick, like I just didn't feel like it was worthwhile. And then so this was in 2018, at the end of 2018. We had the conversation with Peter. He goes, early 2019, I want you to come to Israel. We're going to pay for your ticket. You're going to travel Europe and you're going to come to Israel and you're going to get your citizenship. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. So I get to Tel Aviv and it's this incredible place. And I feel this thing, right? My mother's Italian, my father's Jewish. Like I always had this sense of identity on both, certainly, but like being a Jewish baseball player, you're known throughout the country in these Jewish publications and things. And so I get to Israel and I'm in the apartment for the first time with like 8 other guys who were on the team. And I felt this sense of like pride that there were 4 guys who had been in the big leagues and me and a couple other minor leaguers who were currently playing and me. And I'm like, oh my, like I'm here, like I'm in this room, like my career has gotten me to this point. Okay. Like I think I can get the mindset back. So I leave Israel and I go home and I start hitting again. And I feel that like passion that I had back in college again of like wow, I get to do this. I have the opportunity to do this again, rather than I'm forced to do this like I was playing professional baseball. And to represent Israel on a global stage is important, no matter how far we get. And our team, so we're in Israel that first time. And I said, well, we're going to make the Olympics. And he goes, well, it's this process and this process. You got to win this tournament. You got to get here. And I'm like, this is confusing, but like, we're good enough to make the Olympics. And so in the summer, I went to Germany and, we were introducing ourselves and getting up in front of the team. And I said, I'm Jeremy Wolf. And I never thought I'd be on a baseball field again. And at that moment I was like, oh shit, like I get to play. I get to take batting practice again. I get to be on a bus. I get to put pants on. I get to hit. I get to tape my bats. I get to feel it, not as a pro, but as a kid again. And so we won in Bulgaria, and then I stayed in Europe, and then we played in Lithuania, and then I got to stay in Europe, and I left my job at this time, and I was just had a little bit of money and live in this experience, and I just got to just be myself. And then we won in Germany, and then we won in Italy, and we qualified. And 25 guys on our team, even the 4 born Israelis, like went back to the States. And then it was me and Peter Kurz and a couple coaches. And we flew back to Israel, and I lived in Israel for 6 months. And COVID hit, and I came home and just kind of trained for everything I could here. And Olympics got moved, and then we did the Olympic training, and then the team went off to Tokyo, and I was this close. I was this close from being on that final roster. And so I got to watch, our guys win a game and be in the Olympics from my couch at 3 a.m. And I was with them 2 days before. And, you sit there in the middle of the night and you go, wow, I was just texting him and I was with them and I had my ticket, like I was ready to go, and all this stuff happened. And it's just like, I was this close, but I wasn't disappointed. I was like, wow, cool. And it was the close of the chapter of my time playing sports. And I always say, like, it was really bumpy, just personally. My parents didn't know the things that I was going through. My girlfriend didn't know for the longest time the things that I had gone through. But like, I needed closure. I never had closure. And I'm sitting on the couch at 3 a.m. watching us beat Korea or Mexico or whoever. And I was like, wow, like, cool. And that was it. And I'm like, wow, cool. Now I get to do what I want to do. And I'm very fortunate now, maybe even have the realization every now and then of like, well, that was awesome. Now I want other people to have those experiences too.
That's really amazing. I read that there was only one baseball field in all of Israel. Is that still the case?
There are 4 now. There was one for the longest time. There's about one at Kibbutz Gezer, just outside of Tel Aviv, where Alon Leishman is from, and his dad built a baseball field. And then there became almost our national field at Petah Tikva, which is north of Tel Aviv. So then for the longest time, there were 2. And you have a lot of Americans there who play. It's mostly Americans, but they're doing a really good job on just getting Israelis and Arab Israelis involved. There's a field in the north now. That field doesn't have like grass in the infield. It does have a backstop though. And they do coach and teach baseball up there. And now there are 2 more. There's one in Renana, and there's one going outside Jerusalem. And I think there might be another 1 or 2 popping up. So more
6/7.
opportunity. Yeah, 6 or 7 now. And with more, if you see a baseball field, you're going to be more inclined to play baseball. So, I'll bring equipment when I can and support where I can and support the athletes. We're going to have 2 Israeli coaches, just in case. They live in America, but they speak Hebrew. So if any of those athletes need anything, then they can come to us. And so, just create opportunities to help somebody or have them kind of enjoy the game like I was able to.
I mean, you and I are well versed in the sport opportunity experience in the United States. It sounds immensely different in Israel. How do you break through if you want to be an athlete, if you want to play a sport? Where do you go? Because it does not seem like the answer is baseball.
The answer is no sports in Israel, because at 18, you're in the army, and you're in the army for 3 years, and you can be part of a sports program. Like you can go play your sport, I guess, in the afternoons or on your leaves or on the weekends or on your breaks when you're in the army. But you don't play baseball because there's no college baseball in Israel. And it's mostly a basketball country, but it's a soccer basketball country. Judo is really big there. Fighting combat is big there, but the professional league is good. I think in basketball, they're good. I think one of the teams competes in the European level, like the highest level of the European league. Soccer, I think, is good, but you have to do the army for 3 years. So in America, you're playing high school sports to go play in college. I maybe a handful, certainly. Like you can't think it's universal, but the high school athletes in America want to go to play college. In Israel, you don't really think that way, because you play your sport and then you go to the army and then you get a job or you travel the world or whatever. But I don't know the percentage of college athletes in America from Israel. And there are a couple baseball players, but they're 21, right? So it's a different trajectory. If you're really good, people will find you. Like that's totally true. But is baseball, you can't force people to do something, especially Israelis, because they're stubborn. But if you build baseball fields, people will play anywhere in the world. If you build soccer fields, people will play soccer. If you build movie theaters, people are going to go watch movies. If you build ice cream shops, people are going to go eat ice cream, right? Like it's if you give them access to something, they're going to find whether or not they want to do it, or whether or not they want to put their kids in it, or whether or not they enjoy it. So I think there are 1,000 ball players in Israel, boys and girls. I'm going to guess 20% girls. I don't know for certain though. But 1,000 is better than 0, right? And maybe in 4 years, when the Olympics will not have baseball in the next Olympics, but in the Olympics after they will. Maybe the Israeli national team of all Israeli-born players will make the Olympics. You don't know. I mean, most of this team was, I think, 20 Jewish Americans representing Israel. And there are pros and cons to that. I think a massive pro is having Israeli be in the Olympics for baseball is a massive pro. And I hope that pushes the rest of Israel baseball and the Israelis that play baseball to say, well, we're just as good in Israel. I can help them compete at the next level. So if you build it, they will come is pretty much the too long didn't read of everything.
And I was going to ask you about that, because do you think that the impact of Americans who are Jewish coming over and representing Israel is doing the sport of baseball or sports in general a service or a disservice?
I think when you compete at that level and you're not of that country, there are always people who are going to say, Team Russia shouldn't have American Russians on it. It should only be Russians. It's the same thing for us. We're just of that culture. I became an Israeli citizen because of my Jewish heritage. I never thought that would ever happen. But I always think it's good for any sport when that sport is on a national stage, on a global stage, excuse me. So at the time, you have to do whatever you need to do to compete on a global level or win a European tournament. Because having American Jews representing Israel is really good globally for Jews around the world. And I got notes from a ton of people, ton of Jewish Americans with kids or young Jewish ball players, boys and girls, that said, now because you do it, I can do it too, right? But it begs the question, like, should countries only be represented by the citizens that live in that country? There's certainly pros and cons. It's a really good discussion. And I'm on both sides of it, right? I would really like to see an Israeli national team of Israeli-born players. I would love to see but as one of the people who was a Jewish American who filled a spot on that Israeli national team, it just begs the question of whether or not what the rules are. At the end of the day, you want to win. Why did the Browns get Deshaun Watson? Well, let's be real. They want to win a Super Bowl. And they're going to look past all of the horrible things that he did allegedly, but did, because just because a grand jury said that he wasn't guilty of the crimes doesn't mean he's guilty in a civil suit, right? So there are all of these issues. Teams want to win. Where did the best players come from? America, for the most part. And they're really good players in Israel right now, but they're 18 and 19 and they're in the army. And so you got to do what you got to do to win. And I think this team, the 2020 Tokyo Olympic team, did whatever it could to get to the Olympics. And that's what you have to look at from a global stage. Russia's going to do whatever they can do to win. America is going to do whatever they can do to win a gold medal. They're going to get NBA players. They're going to change the rules to make sure that NBA players can go. or the hockey is going to make sure that, Team USA can win and bring NHL players along. Sports is diplomacy. And I think this is really good for Israel because it put an Israeli national team on the global stage. Just because they were made up of Americans doesn't mean I'm not Israeli. I identify as a Jewish American, but I have Israeli citizenship now. And it's such a dense discussion on whether or not that's ethical or not. We can go into it for hours because I'm on both sides of it. What do I want to see? I just want to see teams win, and I want to see my countries win. And I want to see them win at all costs. Now, I'm not a Browns fan, but I think that's just a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. And it puts everybody in a bad light. What are Browns fans going to do? Cheer for a guy that did those things? I think sports gives you the opportunity to kind of look at all of these cultural things on forgiveness, on what's ethical. And at the end of the day, people are going to put winning and money over everything else. And in the instance of Team Israel, I think we did whatever we could to win and be on a global stage. And that will only benefit the Israeli players coming after it.
I just love this interview so much. Let's talk more about MindReady. Where do you see it going, and what place do you see it playing in this kind of always advancing mental health conversation?
I see it being a really important resource for athletes and their parents and their coaches that need it. That's it. If we get 1 million athletes, great. If we get 1,000 athletes, great. We're going to be able to, we'll be fine, right? Our coaches will be fine. My team and I will be fine. It's about changing the perception on the focus that people need to get, but opens a conversation on mental health by providing a community and a resource. So if MindReady attracts a parent of a 16-year-old that throws his helmet or gets angry after games or shuts down and she doesn't know what to do, or mom or dad doesn't know what to do about it, well, MindReady is a resource that helps in the mental performance of their athlete. If you're an athletic director and you can see, you care, you're there because you care about the well-being of your kids. They're 18 and 19 and 21. And you go, man, I just want to provide something for them, but we can't afford a mental skills coach on staff. And even if we did, can one mental skills coach handle 500 athletes? The answer is no. Now they can do things, they can be helpful, they can be in person, but 500 athletes cannot be supported by one coach because that coach has a family, right? And that coach goes on vacation, right? But if an athletic director goes, what would happen if I had 800 available sessions for the athletes that needed them? Our research shows that athletes, 20% of athletes try to seek out in search of mental health coaching. But what if it was available to them? What would that number be? Would that be 50%? Would it be 75%? Would it be 100%? Nothing's ever 100%, but would it be 99%? Yeah, because the resource is available to them. If we can provide structured support, plus meditations and podcasts and education, plus certifications, plus things that will help coaches help coach their athletes, and things that can help parents help understand what their kids are going through, then I think success is not on dollars and cents. Success is on the amount of sessions we provide. And we have what we call 1 million sessions over the next 10 years. Now that's a lot, and it's a really big goal, and I hope that we get there. But what does that look like, right? It looks at Division III and Division II programs providing this for their athletes. It's individual parents going, I think my kid could use this. It's raising money in partnership with the Hidden Opponent or other mental health nonprofits to say, this donor is going to support this nonprofit that's going to provide X amount of sessions for these athletes who can't afford it. There's community. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and there's communities here that can't afford it, and there's communities here that can't. And I will tell you this: athletes at both of those levels could use this resource. So if one of them can afford it from a booster club, and one of them can get it through donor relationships, we're still providing sessions at the end of the day. It's just how we get to that point. Because we look at it at this holistic level, it just comes down to, can I get this in front of people? Because people will use it because there's a need for it. So in 10 years, I hope we get to 1 million sessions. In 1 year, I want to do 1,000 sessions. That's it. I want to just give one session to one athlete every single day. And it's an infinite mindset in that perspective. So, well, this is a resource that can help an athlete. Now, how can I get it in front of the next person and the next person and the next person? And because I'm on here, somebody might hear it and somebody might go, oh, that's a great idea. And you might go, hey, I had this conversation with this person. I think this can benefit this program. And then I go, hey, I just did this podcast, and I think I would love to hear, I would love for you to hear my perspective on all of these things. It's just a really simple model. Provide something that wasn't there and people are going to use it. And if people don't use it, pivot and adjust, because I knew I wanted it as an athlete. And if there was me, there's a million other me's, probably more. It's the simplest thing in the world. There was no athletic shoe before Nike. Nike built an athletic shoe. Now people wear Nike. It's provide something that's not there before. That's the answer to the question.
How can you use sport, and I'm going to lump mental health conversations in with this question, but overarching sport as an entity, as a universal language?
Sport is a microcosm for society. We've heard that many, many, many times. We see
Many
it
times.
every single day. I don't know if you do graphics, but that should probably like sparkle or be like, on a rainbow. Sport represents everything we see in society. So now where there's Talkspace and BetterHelp and direct to consumer companies that can support the general well-being of employees or just people, we can now bring that down to that niche perspective and say, because sports encompasses all of these different issues, there is now, where there was a segment for the general population, there's now this segment for athletes. From what I understand, and if there are others, I haven't seen them and I really don't care because we do things our way. But I think we're the first that does it in this way. And so people go, oh, that's a really simple concept to understand. I want my kid to try this. I want my kids to try this. I want my athletes to do this. I want my coaches to participate in this. And I hope that because we are doing our best to make sure that everybody has access to it, not just those who are privileged that can't afford our general sessions, but if you can't afford it, there's always something for you to use. And there's always opportunities for you to get the things you need from what we provide. It's not like athletic performance training has gotten this in this space to where it's really expensive. Sports is really expensive. And in this country, I think people more so now than ever are living paycheck to paycheck. And you still want to provide something to your kids. You still want your kids to have what they need. And if this can be in that diet of consumption at an affordable level, accessible level, where it's effective and efficient, your money's going in the right place because you know that you're protecting the mental performance on and off the field for your athlete. MindReady is not mental health focused, mental performance focused. It's the outcomes, it's the outcome measures. We test where you are now when you come in. We test where you are in the middle. We test where you are when you leave. We do not diagnose. We are not therapy. We are the things that need to be provided to athletes from an educational and resource standpoint. But we get to provide one-on-one sessions, and that's just coaching, and that's just mentorship, and that's just being an ear. And our coaches are all really well trained and experts in their field, and they just want to get in front of athletes to just educate them and teach them. And that mindset is just infinite in its scope, because it's not trying to, there's no reason to sell anything on any of this. This is what we believe. This is what we do. This is how you can participate. You can participate at this level, at this level, at this level, or at this entire level. And we welcome every athlete, 45 to 60-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and that might be a little young, but it just depends. Our sweet spot is going to be 14 to 18, and then college athletes. And so if there's athletic directors listening, they have the decision on whether or not they want to provide this. If they're a high school coach, they have the decision on whether or not they want to provide this. So leave it up to them.
Is there anything else? That is the extent of the questions I had to ask you for today. Is there anything else that you think that I missed about your story before you start asking me questions?
Well, I don't know. I talk. So we've done one podcast for MindReady. It's called The Lab. The lab is the perspective of what we provide from an educational standpoint. It's the lab because I think the classroom was way too long, but the lab makes sense because I want to be on a whiteboard. I want to sit in front of a classroom. I want to think about, and I want to explore, and I want to discuss these different topics of what makes preparation important. And we mentioned sports as a microcosm for society, but sports is this microcosm for the rest of our lives. So the way I perform, or the way I prepared for this, was just in a way the same way I prepare for a sporting event, right? You need to be in a zone. Well, what does that feel like? And what does it look like? Or what happens when I fail and I walk back to the dugout, or I miss a shot and to win the game? And there's this, I call it the canyon, when you make a mistake and then you hit your lowest point, and then either you try to bring yourself back up or not. There's this point, right? There's, where are we in this? Right? There are these different ideas that everybody can sort of kind of understand and jump into. And so on the lab, I speak very openly about, and I will, and I've started writing more, and I can't believe you do one a week, but I'm trying to do one a month, and it's just a wild thing for me. But I talked about my attempted suicide, right? And the things that I felt. And I always say, if I feel it, a million other kids feel it. And I never told my parents, and my parents actually heard it. They read it in the blog that we post, and then they heard it on the podcast, and they both called me and said, I had no idea. And I said, I didn't want you to know. And it's something that I think about it every single day of my life.
When was that?
This was in I was a junior in college. And I had felt these horrible, horrible things. And I just was in my lowest point. I felt like I had nobody to talk to, and felt very alone the whole day, and stressed about school and work, and what am I going to do after? And am I going to play professional baseball? And this is like December of my junior year. And so I had those thoughts, right? And it's 8 years later, and you still think about it all the time. But you know that if you had X, Y, and Z in front of you, would you have felt these things? If you didn't feel alone, would you have felt these things? No, I think there's different things for everybody. The things that I'm hearing right now in college and high school sports, they're unfathomable. You cannot put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's done that. You can only wish them peace. You can't ask the questions. But I know that I've felt that feeling, and I've tried that thing. And MindReady came out of that idea, but flipped it to the positive. I had to feel the depths of things to get to a point where I can build something that can build someone up. And I'm sure some of our coaches are going to have conversations with athletes, but about these very things. But we have resources and education for our coaches if those conversations do come up. But where there wasn't a resource that I had access to, if I was an athlete in college now, I now have access to this. And I just wanted someone to talk to about these things that I was going through. And so it's a really interesting thing for me to like think about is this almost epidemic of the struggle that these young kids are going through. And where, I talk with my girlfriend about this all the time. It's a really big topic. Mental health is a really big topic. Speaking openly about mental health is really important. Speaking about my problems, I'm okay speaking about the things that I've gone through, because I do it because Kevin Love did it, and because Simone Biles does it, and because Naomi Osaka does it. And if somebody hears me and goes, I felt those very same things, and it'll open up the conversations for them to talk about it with people in their community. And so MindReady is a portion of that. It's the extent of my willingness and the drive to just provide a resource, something that I wish I had, in the hopes that with more access to open discussions and dialogues about the issues that people face, less of that stuff will happen. That's my hope. You can't, as someone who's been in a position like that before, you can't put yourself in their shoes, but maybe they just wanted somebody to talk to. So that's it. That's it. You just do something fun. We make it fun. All my meetings that I have, I hope this podcast was fun, even though it ended very sourly. But there's a bright side to everything, and there's should be an optimistic perspective on the end of everything. And the perspective that we have in MindReady, if you go through our website, everything's positive. There are negatives that come at it, sure, but we focus on performance. We focus on the positivities that can come from an athletic career during and after. And if you feel like you need access to something, now there is a something. And I'm happy at the end of the day that I've decided to build those things.
That's a great way to end this episode. Okay, now you get to be the interviewer. You said you had questions for me. What are they?
Okay. Why?
I'm going to stop recording though.
Okay, good.